Dear students, welcome to the 30th session, which is on the Pickwick Papers by Charles Dickens, prescribed by the Mangalore University for third semester BA Optional English, Paper 3, Victorian Literature. This is Vasanta Ravi Prakash, Associate Professor, Department of English, Purnapratna College, Udupi. This video highlights chapters 49 to 52. Let us see the recap of the previous session. Sam receives a jailhouse visit from his father, his stepmother, and Mr. Stiggins. Mrs. Bardell is arrested for non-payment and is sent to the same prison where Pickwick and Sam are confined. The Winkles ask for Mr. Pickwick's help in persuading Mr. Winkle's brother and Mr. Winkle's father to forgive them for eloping. Ben, Bob, and Arabella's aunt accept the marriage of Arabella and Winkle finally. Now, Dickens presents a ghost story about the bagman's uncle, who, when walking late one night, dozed off near a deserted courtyard, and later he had a dream. When he awakens, he finds bustling activity around him. He was forced to ride the coach. Inside the coach, he finds a lady and two men. The lady pleads the bagman's uncle to help her. He encounters the two men and kills one of them. The lady kills another one. The bagman's uncle falls in love with the lady. The two of them run away. Later, when the bagman's uncle wakes up, he finds the coach empty. He realizes the lady is a ghost. Dickens uses this device of a ghost story to bring out the heroic side of a man. This story is to show how men can become heroic to please women. Now, Dickens' romantic side comes to the forefront. Mr. Winkle and Arabella have chosen each other over societal expectations. Dickens ends chapter 49 with a bad joke about male ghosts and dead letters. This proves that the novel is not just a grand romantic story. Mr. Pickwick sets out to plead with Mr. Winkle's father the newlyweds case. Mr. Winkle's seminar turns out to be unresponsive. The reason being, Ben Allen and Bob Sawyer, who had accompanied Mr. Pickwick on his mission, getting drunk. Mr. Winkle is unhappy about the marriage of his son because Arabella was not rich. He finds marriage as a business, and he finds his son to be less productive than consumer. Dickens' two views of marriage are projected: practical marriage for money or family reputation, which does not seem to work, and the romantic marriage that works. During the Victorian era, women were encouraged to make good marriages. Men brought wealth to the family through hard work on inheritance, while women supervised the household. For this reason, Mr. Winkle's father was unhappy about his son's incompetency. Mr. Winkle manages to elope with Arabella without much external help. Mr. Pickwick, Sam, Sawyer, and Ben Allen meet Mr. Pott, the newspaper editor from Eatanswill, at an inn. We have come across Mr. Pott and Mrs. Pott in the place called Eatanswill during the time of an election. Mrs. Pott had separated from her husband because of his intense liking for politics. On learning that Mr. Winkle is married, Mr. Pott is strongly amused. If we recall the incident which happened in the past, Mr. Pott was unhappy about a news which scandalized the reputation of his wife because a journal had published that his wife had an affair with Mr. Winkle. Mr. Slurk, an editor of the opposing Eatanswill paper, ends up fighting with Pott on arrival at the inn. The fight is broken by Sam and the two editors express their resentment in the print. The Pickwick's group continue their road journey to London. Newspaper editors are tackled to expose their absurdity and hypocrisy. The fight between the buff and the blue is revived. Mr. Pott is totally ignorant about everything other than politics. The word crammed is highlighted in this chapter. It reminds the readers of an unprepared student for his exam. Dickens' prowess as a journalist turned novelist is observed here. Journalists are shown to be another members of the group comprising lawyers and politicians who only indulge in empty talk. On the other hand, on his return to London, Sam receives a letter from his father. Things turn out to be entirely sad and problematic. Sam learns that his stepmother is dead and has left her money to Mr. Weller and Sam. Mr. Stiggins appears on the scene to show if Sam's mother has left any money for him. This speaks of his greed. Mr. Stiggins is kicked down the stairs after being thrown at a drink on his face and dumped in a house by Mr. Weller. A change of events occur. Sam Weller's stepmother's death throws light on unexpected happenings. Mr. Weller repents for having complained about his wife throughout and turns somber after she dies. Mrs. Weller had repented for her excessive religious behavior on her deathbed. In this context, Dickens brings out the significance of deathbed as a sacred place in Victorian literature. Dickens puts in a piece of advice through Mrs. Weller to his audience, which is sure to be heeded. Let us come to the multiple choice questions. Question number 1. The ghost story involves Sam Weller's father, Sam Weller's stepmother, Mr. Winkle, the bagman's uncle. The answer is the bagman's uncle. Question number 2. Who turns out to be unresponsive about the newlyweds case? Is it Sam Weller's father, or Mr. Winkle, or Bob Sawyer, or Ben Allen? It is Mr. Winkle who turns out to be unresponsive about the newlyweds case. Question number 3. Who is the newspaper editor from Eatanswill who appears in this episode? Mr. Pott, Bob Sawyer, Ben Allen, none of the above. Let us see the answer now. It is Mr. Pott who is the newspaper editor from Eatanswill. Question number 4. Who is the editor of the opposing Eatanswill paper? Is it Mr. Pott, or Mr. Slurk, or Bob Sawyer, or Ben Allen? Let's see the answer now. The answer is Mr. Slurk. The last question is, who is treated badly by Sam Weller's father? Is it Bob Sawyer, or Ben Allen, or Mr. Stiggins, or Mr. Pott? It is Mr. Stiggins for his misbehavior treated badly by Sam Weller's father. Dear students, now we come to the end of the 30th session. Thank you.